Toniná, also originated from 7 sacred stones wrapped in the spirit of the wind to celebrate the birth of the star. Here, at the ballgame court, the forces of the 4 essential elements and of the 4 directions of the universe would join together. The contrasting forces of the world, day and night, good and evil, morning and evening gods, would confront each other, represented by the strength and the ability of the players. Attired with leather and cotton protectors, the Mayas would hit a hard rubber ball to make it touch one of the stone markers located on the sloping panels in order to score. They did it since the beginning of time. The Book of the Popol Vuh already mentions the lords Apu, founders of a strong dynasty, who aside from knowing the direction of the clouds in order to enjoy themselves, they would lavishly dress and play ball in the appropriate courts. They were the masters of the game, so much so that they were envied by others. They enthusiastically flaunted their ability when the game was pure fun. They did not curb their shouting, nor their hustle and bustle. They would clap their hands like young men in love, with flushed cheeks and a half-open mouth. They would finish a game and begin a new one, each time becoming more and more excited. For this ecstatic rapture, they were punished with death. But before they died, they gave life to the Unapu twins, who were more skillful than anybody else at the game. Their dexterity was such that they defeated the lords of the sky themselves. At the beginning of the next day, the twins came. Under the shade of the walls of the ballgame court, they met their adversaries. Then they played the way they knew how, hitting the ball sometimes with their feet and others with their hips, but never with their hands, which they let hang loose or held up high. They would only use them at certain moments, brandishing rackets. Thus they played and won. Within the sacred space of the ballgame court, the Mayas carried out the infinite dance of the whole universe. The architecture in Toniná emerges taking advantage of the land's topographic situation. The dimensions of the constructions are such that it would seem they are trying to reach out to the sky. That is the way the Palace of the Frets works. Its facade is ornamented with 4 steeped spiral frets. On the top of those is a heavenly band having the sun and the stars as symbols, and crowning it all is a war shield. A narrow staircase leading to a profusely decorated masonry is located to one side. Chiseled on it are jaguars, shields, and arrows. Also engraved is the emblem glyph of Toniná, the face of a jaguar with the signs of Venus. Everyday life of Maya men and women was tied to that which is sacred. The direction of the wind, plants, animals, and colors, everything was charged with a meaning that ruled every instant in the existence of these people. Cities like Toniná are erected with temples, palaces, sanctuaries, ballgame courts, steam baths, observatories, pathways, and dwelling compounds, according to society's different levels. In the structure of these urban complexes, planning was based not only on everyday activities, but also obeying in its distribution and orientation to the knowledge of the sky and the recurring willfulness of nature. A unique element in Mesoamerica stands out in Maya architecture: the use of the false arch. Also, the search for human scale in its entire architecture provides its buildings with a character that brings its people closer to its gods. The spaces for the lords to live in were constructed with more durable material. The inside distribution of the buildings aimed at combining comfort with a direct relation with the recipient of their devotion. The basic unit of this complex social organization was the family. Its entire strict social pyramid was based on it. We find the commoners at the bottom, the farmers who worked the land, and the builders who constructed the cities. Craftsmen and merchants formed the second level, while warriors and bureaucrats constituted the third. Ruling lords and priests formed the top level, right before the peak, in which the great lord, who possessed not only the ruler's political power, but also the attributes of a great war leader and great priest, was situated. The question of their social order was based on this classification. The complex architectural structure of this tomb reminds us of the high rank of the person buried in it. The stone sarcophagus, located under a perfect Maya corbel vault, holds the remains of a ruling lord who was accompanied by an offering containing pottery, seashell objects, obsidian and silex knives, and jade beads. All these artifacts were fundamental for everyday life. And to the dead Mayas, life would carry on forever. Crowning the top of the temples, as they head towards the sky, is the stucco representation of the earth monster, who tells us of the relationship of men with the earth, which is the giver of life. On the other hand, the temple roof ridges linked the sky gods with the people on earth, the Mayas, the true jungle people. Here is the earth monster. For the first time, we can see its entire figure, modeled in stucco, with all its attributes. The sphere that we see in its fosses is the solar sphere, which is devoured by the earth monster every sunset. A fundamental axis, a reference of works and days, storyteller to the trees, a bridge between the earth where we live and the underworld we are headed to after death. The earth monster, in connection with the sun, is a source of life. The architectural prodigy of the arches, of the roof ridges, and of the architectural elements in the sacred city of Toniná are designed in such a manner as to fill with admiration any man or woman who walk along its pathways and its courtyards. The majesty of its buildings and temples remind us of the fact that time wraps up everything that exists or perishes with its double sign cloak. To act in accordance to life, the Mayas confronted time with a complicated funerary system, such as this burial placed in a special space made with stone slabs. In it, we can observe the skull deformation that was fashionable among the Mayas in order to achieve their idea of beauty. The richness of the offerings, aside from helping the dead live in the underworld, provided an indication of their social status. From jaguar skins to basket remains, pottery, jade, bone and antler artifacts, silex knives, obsidian objects, manta ray spine, alabaster vessels or cacao seeds. The amount and diversity of the materials found in the tombs are a faithful reflection of the everyday life of the Mayas, the builders of the jungle world. In this great game of life and memory, the Mayas from Toniná created a distinctive architecture in their permanent search for divinity. Spaces are combined in it in order to find the solitude that aims at discovering the mysteries from the sky, and at the same time, the space to live with the fears and the joys of religion and myths. The roof ridges that reach out to the sky in the center of the temples, the predominance of the roofed space over the thick walls, the stucco decoration, the creation of altars and stelae with an endless number of hieroglyphic inscriptions are the elements with which the architecture in Toniná competes with the exuberance of what used to be its jungle. We must imagine the play between the pedestal and the sloping panel as a feast of the soul, with its walls covered with stucco, sometimes red and sometimes blue. The permanent memory of good and evil reach directly to our heart and memory through our sight. Natural elevations of the terrain were taken advantage of in Toniná, and limestone slabs were placed on top in order to adapt platforms, pedestals, terraces, staircases, palaces, ball game courts, altars and temples, as if they were the strings of a complex architectural network, which is the result of different times and of an eminently cosmic mentality. Here is the Temple of the Prisoners. A mural modeled in stucco celebrates the conquests of Toniná on one of its walls. Several characters can be observed here, all kneeling down and tied, accompanied by their respective glyphs. The succession of battles that took place in the search to control territories and property caused them to sing their victories. The ruling lord's glory depended on them. The architecture of the sacred city of Toniná sank to beauty and its mystery. The rich representation of this personage emerged from the depth of the years. He was a ruler of the city at its time of splendor. He wears an attire according to his high rank, and a complex headdress with solar god masks brings him closer to the sky. His necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and arm ornaments speak of his wealth. As was common among the Mayas, when the ruler died, all his images were broken and buried. The images of the next ruler occupied their place. The ceremonial staff he carries in his arms is a symbol of his power. This is Tzotzchoch. The men from Toniná erected a group of monumental altars near the ballgame court, in which they created circular bands full of calendar inscriptions. And it is just that the handling of time was an art in the hands of the Mayas. They would combine and simultaneously calculate two cycles, a religious and a solar cycle. Thus, a certain day would only repeat itself every 52 years. And so, their time calculating system permitted them to plan their agricultural activities in order to interlink religious rites to astrological events and to register the most relevant historical happenings. The beauty of the sculptures of lords, gods, and prisoners tells us of the events that created their history. The people of Toniná excelled in the outstanding mastery and quality of their sculptures. they also handled the flow of their memories. The spaces created in Toniná steers us. The rhythm of its elements sink to the light, to the shadows, to the jungle, and to memory. Architecture here reached its greatest expression. Thus, the city is logically and symmetrically organized as only a dreamlike jungle can be. This way, it is part of an order that man cannot understand, but from which he cannot escape either. What happens in the city is a result of its architecture, and thus it enables man to see the invisible and to reach that which he imagines and dreams of. To transform the jungle space, to be able to watch the sky and to have faith in following the signs that led to the formation of their destiny. Such was the fate of the lowland Mayas. Such was the way they raised their voices in order to weave with the sound, with the stone, and with the light, the sun, and the construction of Toniná. The death mural shows red rivers of blood that gather in their bosom the descending gods. This mural, worked in stucco on top of a monumental sloping panel, speaks of the sacrifice, a fundamental rite in the life of the Mayas. In the midst of prayers and fruit, flower and food offerings, singing, dancing, and burning aromatic resins, the sacrificed ensured the renewal of life. That is the reason why sacrificial victims were beheaded, or else their heart was extracted, or the selected victim was shot in the chest with arrows as he waited, tied to a wooden wheel. The dramatic realism of the scene is frightening. A person with a jaguar head seems to be working with a plant. A skull is placed on a central spot. The sense of life seems to be displayed here. Animals, men and sons show, as if on a stage presentation, the endless circle of the relationship between the Mayas and the cosmos. Four low altars preside the ceremony described on the mural. Finely carved monumental sculptures in the center of each represent mute witnesses of the scene, in which the presence of a skeleton carrying the head of a beheaded victim stands out. Red was the sun. Red were the blood, the future and the past. The tragedy of life in the jungle, masked by the weak boundary between nightmares and dreams, is hereby explained. The death mural shows red rivers of blood which gather in their bosom the descending suns. The jungle achieves gigantic proportions in Bonampak. Architecture finds its space in the crevices of its perennial trees. Here it is, never night nor day, thus time multiplies. Stela number 1 occupies the center of the universe itself in the Grand Plaza. Its 5 meters in height provide a testimony of the superb results with which the Mayas from the classic period handled both time and memory. This is Chan Muan, one of the most outstanding characters in the city. The glyphs show the date 782 after Christ. The Earth Monster. He carries a shield with the face of the solar god in his left arm, a feathered headdress and cape, and a great spear in his right hand. The south of the Grand Plaza is limited by the main building compound. A monumental staircase takes us from the ground level in the plaza all the way to the highest constructions. Stelae numbers 2, 3, and 4 are situated on top. These are outstanding examples of the Maya preoccupation to leave their memories inscribed. Stela number 2 presents an engraving of the scene in which Chan Muan is accompanied by the Lady Rabbit from Yaxchilan and by his mother. The date inscribed in the glyphs is 791 after Christ. The view of this monument is amazing, not only because of its hieroglyphic texts, which point out dates, names, and events, but also because the lavishness of the attires, the headdresses, and the ornaments are represented here in full detail. The excess of life in the jungle is reproduced in building number 1 of this city. Inside its 3 chambers, the colors speak of a reality within a permanently established order. 77 characters are represented in the first chamber, and 3 levels in 4 different scenes stand out, perhaps as part of one same discourse. Great masks of the solar god were painted in the 3rd representation level. The main characters in the political life of the city watch a scene in the 2nd level, in which a lavishly attired group of men and women are sitting over some kind of throne, presenting a child to their rulers. The murals at Bonampak were carried out on a surface prepared with lime and crushed limestone. The colors have a mineral and vegetable origin, and thus they present the entire variety of the universe: black, gray, light and dark red, pink, brown, yellow, turquoise, blue, and green. The first level is formed by a large group of musicians playing trumpets, kettle drums, drums and rattles. We see 6 characters wearing masks in the shape of fantastic animals, and 13 characters adorned with lavish headdresses accompanying the musicians. The 3 lintels that adorn the entrance to the chambers represent Chan Muan holding his enemies prisoners, thus procuring all the glory for himself. There are 88 characters represented in the central chamber, which is known as the chamber of the battle. The artist presents the action in two planes in order to achieve a perfect field depth in the scene. Almost all the characters are warriors. Apparently, the four main figures represent the lords. They occupy the central space and they threaten a prisoner with their spears. The rest of the warriors wear different attires and carry weapons. They all stand in various positions, but they face the central point of this scene. There are 67 characters painted in two scenes in the third chamber. They are apparently celebrating a victory. Some of these characters wear great green and red feathered headdresses, and apart from the large fans they carry, they are dressed with such long pieces of cloth that they must hold them up with sticks. A group of musicians in the top level makes the celebration even more agreeable. Thus, Bonampak is the city of the memory of the jungle. Comalcalco was built under the influence of the sea and of the clay. This city represents the western limit of the Maya world. The density of the clay, mingled with the smell of the sea, produced a challenge in her nature. Comalcalco artisans constructed the buildings in their sacred city, utilizing clay in view of the lack of limestone as their fundamental material, using it either as filling or in the shape of baked bricks. Thus, building number 1 was constructed with a great step-like pyramidal pedestal with gigantic staircases, with wooden beams which led to the temple. The center of the building is made of mud, covered with bricks, some of which have the peculiarity of being engraved, modeled or presenting narrow slits, which show the wildlife in the area, architectural crevices in the temples, or simple geometric drawings. Flattened stucco, which is a mixture of lime and sand, was created by burning large quantities of oyster shells in order to obtain high-quality lime. The Grand Plaza in Comalcalco represents more space than time, and thus it is closer to poetry. It is limited to the sides by rows of successive buildings covered with their special stucco, and so it renews with surprise the long-forgotten memories. Inside, above, and to the sides, time is born anew and continues to reappear in order to bring us that murmuring sound which 1,200 years ago was the permanent hustle and bustle of dreams and life. The Mayas from Comalcalco were able to create a monumental architecture by continuously superimposing buildings and by perfecting their brick structure. Here we have the Acropolis as a good example. The palace is located at the top. It is an orderly sum of buildings with long corridors, where the roofed space is wider than the columns, which proves the technical prodigy of the builders of this city. The majesty of the arches show the will of the Mayas to live, and with it, their interest to adore their main gods, convinced that the religious drama of their everyday existence was conceived to be contemplated as they went along through life. Here, the dreams of the men and women from Comalcalco can still be heard at sunrise, inspired by fire and earth. We find a temple which still preserves part of a brick vault in the lower section of the palace. The inside walls still present the remains of the stucco representation of 9 standing characters, all painted in red and simply dressed. They are the Bolontiku, the 9 lords of the underworld. Due to the same lack of limestone in the city, no sculptured monuments were created, such as altars, stelae, or lintels. On the other hand, the modeling in stucco and the engravings in some of the bricks serve as a testimony of the city's grandeur. The building of the sedentary characters is located in the western courtyard of the palace. It takes its name from the delicate representation of 3 sitting individuals who remind us of the modeling style in stucco from Palenque, Yaxchilan, or Bonampak. At the same time, a 2-headed serpent, the symbol of power, is represented framed by a band of glyphs and heavenly symbols. To the side, the great mosque building is ornamented with the face of Kinich Ahau, the lord of the solar face, represented here wearing a lavish and fantastic headdress, and with the fangs which are a fundamental feature of Kin, the sun. The Mayas from Comalcalco astound us once again at the base of the pedestal of building number 1 with their artistic ability to model stucco. Here we see the remains of the representation of the great heavenly bird, accompanied by a group of characters, symbols, and solar representations. They were painted in several colors, as if they pretended to feed the great heavenly bird with the life that reflects itself. Comalcalco. The word in itself makes the entire soul of the Mayas ring. The Mayas, who smell of the sea. The Mayas, made of clay. The people from the sunset. The men and women from Toniná, Bonampak, and Comalcalco knew how to sail from the jungle to the sea of permanent time. That is how they created a perfect memory which comprises time and makes space grow. Let us learn to sing to the verdure of the soul that created them. From dawn to sunset, the Mayas, under the influence of the surrounding elements, clay and fire, air and water, lived a memorable time that still survives up to our present days. Today, the Maya's immortal creating blood rushes through our veins. Let us agree to live in the sunlight, in the moonlight, to glorify the dreams that makes it live.